When I woke up, the first thing I felt was the cold. Not the kind that bites, but the kind that seeps, through skin, through bone, straight into thought. Grass pressed against my cheek, wet with morning dew. The air smelled like rain and dirt and something faintly chemical, maybe smoke. I didn't know where I was. Or who I was. For a moment I just lay there, staring at the pale sky, listening to wind move through tall weeds. There were no houses, no cars, just the buzz of insects and the whisper of my own breathing. My head throbbed in one sharp rhythm, as if a drum were trapped inside. When I tried to sit up, pain stabbed behind my eyes. I looked down. My hands were scraped raw, nails caked with dirt. The shirt I wore was torn at the shoulder and smelled faintly of gasoline. The name tag on it, if it ever had one, was missing. I searched my pockets, nothing but a small key, half bent, and a piece of torn fabric that might have been from a jacket. Then came the word. Out of nowhere, like it belonged to a memory that had survived everything else. Maria. The sound of it filled my head like a bell. I didn't know if she was my wife, my sister, or a ghost, but it was the only thing that felt real. I stumbled to my feet, dizzy, legs trembling. The world spun, steadied, then spun again. Around me stretched open land, an ocean of golden weeds, an occasional tree, a fence far off to the west. I saw a dirt road cutting through and decided to follow it. The walk felt endless. My boots were heavy, as if filled with sand. My throat burned for water. A few times, I thought I heard footsteps behind me, but when I turned there was nothing, only the wind dragging through grass. Eventually, after what felt like hours, I reached asphalt. A narrow county highway, 2 faded lanes and a sun-bleached sign that said, Riverside 12. I had no idea what that meant. I waited by the side of the road, raising my hand when trucks passed, but none slowed. Maybe I looked too wild, or maybe no one wanted to stop for a stranger with blood on his knuckles. When I finally saw a house, it looked like it had been standing there forever, paint peeling, porch sagging, a rust-colored tractor parked beside a barn. Smoke rose gently from a metal chimney. I walked up the gravel drive, rehearsing words that didn't sound right in my own voice. A woman came out to meet me, wiping her hands on her jeans. She had dark blonde hair tied back, sleeves rolled to her elbows, and the kind of expression that could decide in half a second whether you were danger or not. "You all right there?" she asked. "I think so," I said, but my voice cracked. "I woke up out in the field." Her brow furrowed. "You hurt?" "I don't think so. Just, can't remember much." That made her pause. She looked at me, really looked, and the suspicion in her eyes softened slightly. "You lost your memory?" I nodded. She sighed, motioned toward the porch. "Sit. I'll get you some water." The glass she brought back was the best thing I'd ever tasted. Cold, clean, real. She introduced herself as Grace Halpern. The name suited her, solid, old-fashioned, calm. "You got a name?" she asked. I opened my mouth, but only silence came. Then, without thinking, I said, "Aaron." It felt wrong, but it stuck. Grace called the sheriff in town, a gray-haired man named Blakely, who arrived 20 minutes later in a dusty SUV. He asked questions, took notes, and promised to check missing person reports. He didn't seem too worried, maybe amnesia wasn't rare out here. "No ID, no wallet, no phone?" he asked. "Nothing," I said. "Just this." I showed him the bent key. He turned it in his hand. "Could be from anywhere. You remember how you got those cuts?" I shook my head. "Well," he said finally, slipping the key back. "If no one comes looking for you, the Halperns have spare room in the shed. Help her out around here till things come back. Sometimes work does the trick." Grace looked at me like she hadn't agreed to that yet, but after the sheriff left, she nodded. "You can stay a few days. There's a cot in the tool shed. You work, you eat. Fair enough?" I thanked her. That night, I couldn't sleep. The shed smelled of hay and oil. Somewhere outside, an animal cried, maybe a fox. Every time I closed my eyes, flashes came, a woman's hand on my cheek, a gold ring glinting in sunlight, a fire roaring in the dark. Then nothing. When dawn came, Grace handed me gloves and sent me to fix a fence line. My body moved like it remembered what to do, even if my mind didn't. I hammered nails, lifted posts, tied wire. Each sound, clink, snap, pull, felt familiar, like muscle memory from another life. In the afternoon, Grace brought lemonade. "You work like you've done this before," she said. "Feels like it. Maybe you were a farmer." I smiled faintly. "Doesn't feel like that." She tilted her head. "Then what does it feel like?" I didn't know how to answer. The truth was, it felt like I'd built something before, not fences, but something that required hands, focus, precision. A structure, maybe. A house. Or a life. When she left, I looked out over the fields. Somewhere beyond the horizon, someone named Maria existed. Maybe she was waiting. Maybe she wasn't. That night, I tried saying the name aloud. Maria. It tasted like sorrow and warmth at the same time. The days began to blend. I fixed engines, carried hay, helped Grace paint the barn door. She was quieter than most people I'd met, or maybe I hadn't met anyone, I wasn't sure anymore. Her husband had died a year before, she said, tractor accident. She kept to herself, kept the land going because it was all she had left. Sometimes I caught her watching me, curiosity mixed with something gentler. We didn't talk much, but silence between us didn't feel empty. On the fourth night, the dreams came sharper. This time I saw the woman clearly, dark hair, laughing as sunlight spilled across her shoulders. A man's voice echoed, "We'll take care of her while you're gone." Then fire again, an explosion, a scream that wasn't mine. I woke gasping. Grace was standing in the doorway, holding a lantern. "You were yelling," she said softly. "I'm sorry." She hesitated. "You said a name." I swallowed. "Maria. Who is she?" "I don't know," I whispered. "But I think she's why I'm still here." Grace didn't ask more. She set the lantern down and left. The light flickered across the shed walls like distant flames. When morning came, I felt the first pull of certainty. I didn't know how I'd lost my memory, but I was sure of one thing: Maria was real, and the answers, whatever they were, started with her name. The days on the farm had rhythm. Mornings smelled like coffee and wet soil. Evenings were quiet except for the hum of insects and the slow creak of the barn roof in the wind. After the emptiness of the field, that routine felt like safety, but safety has a way of turning strange when you don't know what it's protecting you from. Grace said I'd been here 2 weeks when I first noticed the pattern. Every night, just after sunset, she walked to the barn with a flashlight. She stayed there for maybe 10 minutes, no more, then came back. I heard the creak of a small door inside, the rattle of metal. I told myself it was just supplies, feed, whatever farmers keep hidden from raccoons. Still, it made me uneasy, the precision of it. My head had started healing, but the ache lingered, a low pulse that came when I tried to remember too hard. Sometimes the sound of a hammer hitting metal made me dizzy. Sometimes a smell, diesel, wet wood, burnt plastic, turned my stomach inside out. One afternoon, I was mending a fence post when a pickup truck pulled into the drive. A heavy man in a baseball cap got out, carrying a clipboard. He walked straight toward Grace, talking too quietly for me to hear. I pretended to keep working, but his tone had an edge to it, sharp, almost threatening. Grace's jaw tightened. When he left, she caught me looking. "Developer," she said shortly. "Keeps trying to buy this place cheap. Thinks because I'm alone, I'll fold. You want me to be around next time?" Her eyes flicked toward mine, a pause long enough to mean something, then she nodded once. "I wouldn't mind that." That night, when I went to the shed, I saw the flashlight flicker again in the barn. I waited, then walked quietly after her, keeping to the shadows. The barn door was ajar. Inside, Grace stood beside a shelf, pulling something from behind a stack of feed sacks. I stepped closer, the floorboard groaned, she spun around. "Jesus, Aaron," she said, hand on her chest. "You trying to scare me to death?" "Sorry," I muttered. "Just, couldn't sleep." She studied me for a long moment. Then she put the object down on the table, an old radio, the kind used for short-range communication. Its red light blinked once, then died. "Storm warning system," she said quickly. "It barely works." But the lie was too smooth. We stood in silence for a few seconds before she brushed past me. The smell of hay and dust followed her out. When she was gone, I looked at the radio. Someone had carved initials on the side, TH. I didn't know why, but those letters crawled under my skin. The next morning, the sheriff came back. He said he hadn't found any missing person report that matched my description. But, he added, there was a case from about 2 years ago. Cabin explosion up north. Guy never recovered. Body wasn't found till weeks later, or what was left of it. Wife identified him. I asked, what was his name? He looked at his notes. Reeves. Michael Reeves. Ring any bells? The name hit like a whisper through fog, almost familiar, but not enough. I shook my head. No. Doesn't sound right. The sheriff nodded, not convinced. Well, you let me know if anything surfaces. When he left, Grace seemed restless. You remember anything? Nothing new, I said, though my pulse betrayed me. That night, I dreamed again, but this time, it wasn't fire. It was water. I stood on a dock, holding someone's hand. A woman. She was laughing, saying my name, not Aaron. Michael. Then the sound cut out, like a film reel snapped in half, and I woke gasping. I found Grace in the kitchen, half asleep, making tea. She looked at me and said quietly, "You said that name again." "What name?" "Maria. You kept saying it in your sleep. Over and over." Something in me clenched. Maybe she's my wife. Grace's expression softened, but there was a shadow behind her eyes I couldn't read. If she is, she's probably looking for you. I don't think so, I said before realizing why. If she were? I'd already be found. The silence after that was heavy. Over the next few days, I started noticing things I hadn't before. There was a camera mounted on the edge of the barn roof, half broken but wired. Grace said her late husband had installed it for coyotes. I wasn't sure I believed her. Once, I thought I saw movement near the field road, someone watching from the tree line. When I went closer, there was nothing but tracks in the mud. Then came the storm. The sky turned iron gray by noon. Winds bent the trees sideways. Grace and I worked fast, pulling tarps, locking shutters. The rain came in sheets, hammering the roof. When lightning struck near the barn, the radio, the one I'd seen before, crackled faintly, even without power. A distorted voice came through, only a few words clear. "Not safe, he's alive." Grace froze. I grabbed the device, but the signal died instantly. "Who was that?" I asked. She shook her head, too fast. "Probably static. Storm interference." But her hands were trembling. That night, when the storm passed, I couldn't sleep. I waited until I heard her door close, then went to the barn. The radio was gone. In its place lay a small box, locked, with the same initials, TH, etched on top. I didn't open it. Not yet. Something told me I wasn't supposed to. The next morning, Grace acted normal, making breakfast, talking about fixing the barn roof. I played along, but the air between us had changed. She avoided eye contact, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she knew more about me than she let on. Later, when she went into town for supplies, I borrowed her old laptop from the kitchen. It was dusty, slow, but still worked. I typed Maria into the search bar. Then, as if my brain finally released a name it had been clutching too tightly, I added Turner. Dozens of results appeared. I scrolled, heart pounding, until I saw her, the woman from my dreams. Same dark hair, same smile. Her profile read, Maria Turner Reeves. I clicked. The first thing I saw was a post pinned to the top. 2 years ago today, I lost my husband, Michael. You're loved, you're missed, you're everywhere. And beneath it, a photo of her and me. My arm around her shoulders, both of us smiling. My stomach dropped. The man in the picture was me. The caption below read, "He died doing what he loved. I hope he's at peace." My reflection stared back from the laptop screen, the same face, a little older, thinner, marked by scars I didn't remember earning. Behind me, the floor creaked. I turned. Grace stood in the doorway, eyes wide. "You remember now," she said quietly. I didn't answer. Because in that moment, I did. My name wasn't Aaron. It was Michael Reeves. And according to the world, I'd been dead for 2 years. I didn't sleep that night. The photo on the laptop glowed in the dark like a ghost that refused to leave. Maria Turner Reeves. Married. 2 years widowed. Her husband, me. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. Every instinct screamed that it was impossible. If she thought I was dead, someone told her I was. Someone made her believe it. When dawn came, I walked out to the fields. The sky was pale silver, the kind of color that feels like waiting. Grace was already there, tossing feed for the hens. She didn't look surprised when I said, "My name's Michael. Not Aaron." "I know," she said softly. I figured. "How?" "The way you look at things. Not like someone lost, like someone looking for proof." There was no accusation in her voice, but something in her eyes told me she'd known more than she'd said. I wanted to ask about the radio, the initials, the man who'd come with the clipboard, but I didn't. Not yet. That day, I worked like I was trying to sweat the confusion out of my body. But the memories kept pushing through, fragments, sharp and sudden. A cabin in the woods. Laughter. Maria pouring wine. My best friend Nick Saunders standing by the door, saying, "We'll take care of everything while you're gone." Then, a sound, an explosion. I saw it clearly for the first time, fire blooming through wooden beams, the floor splitting beneath me. I tried to reach the door, but smoke filled my lungs. Then, black. When I opened my eyes again, I was in that field. Alone. That afternoon, while Grace drove to town, I sat at the kitchen table with her laptop and searched Nick Saunders. It didn't take long. His name was attached to a business, Reeves and Saunders Design Group. My heart stopped at the logo. It was the one I remembered sketching on a napkin years ago, a construction and design firm I'd started with Nick before the accident. Only now, there was no Reeves on the board. I clicked through photos. There they were, Nick and Maria, smiling at a ribbon-cutting ceremony. Her hand rested on his arm. The caption read, "Building Dreams Together." My stomach turned to stone. I clicked through more. An anniversary post. A gala photo. Her last name changed, Maria Saunders. 2 years after I'd died. I closed the laptop slowly, my pulse hammering. It wasn't just betrayal. It was erasure. When Grace came back, I confronted her. You knew, didn't you? She froze in the doorway. Knew what? That Maria and Nick, they're alive, together. You knew who I was. Her lips parted, but she didn't speak. Tell me, Grace. Please. She exhaled, looked out the window before answering. A few days after you showed up, the sheriff called. He said a man named Michael Reeves was declared dead 2 years ago, explosion at a cabin. Wife identified the body. I checked the photo online. It was you. So why didn't you say anything? Because I wasn't sure if you wanted to know. You looked peaceful for once. Like starting over didn't scare you. I laughed bitterly. Starting over as someone else. That's not peace, Grace. That's pretending. She flinched, then said quietly, pretending's how I survived too. That stopped me. For a second, the anger ebbed. But not enough. That night, when she fell asleep, I opened the small box from the barn. The one marked TH inside were papers, yellowed and brittle, old land deeds, a letter from a lawyer, and a note written in hurried script. He's not dead. They lied. Don't go to the police yet. Watch the road. No signature. Just the initials again. I folded the paper back slowly. Whoever TH was, they'd known something, maybe the person Grace talked to on that broken radio. By morning, I decided, I wasn't running anymore. I called Sheriff Blakely, pretending to ask about a cousin named Reeves. He agreed to meet. When I asked if the death records from the explosion could be reopened, he looked wary. Why, he said. Because I don't think the body they buried was mine. That got his attention. He promised to check the old file. The report said the remains were found 2 weeks later, badly burned. Identification was based on a wedding ring. A wedding ring. I remembered slipping it off before the trip, setting it on the cabin table because it was too tight. The detail hit me like a bullet. That's how they'd done it. Back at the farm, I told Grace everything. She listened in silence, hands clasped tight. What are you going to do? She finally asked. Find them. Find out what they did to me. Then what? I looked at her, realizing she wanted me to say come back. But I couldn't yet. Then I'll decide who I want to be, Michael, Aaron, or no one at all. She nodded, but her eyes said something else, fear that once I left, I wouldn't return. That evening, as I prepared to go, I checked one last time online. A new post appeared on Maria's page, a photo of her and Nick at their office's 2nd anniversary. Grateful every day for second chances. My reflection in the laptop screen looked nothing like the man beside her. That man was gone, and maybe he deserved to be. I took the bent key from my pocket, turning it between my fingers. Somewhere deep inside, I knew it fit something important, a safe, a locker, maybe the cabin. Whatever it was, it held the rest of my story. When I told Grace I'd be leaving soon, she didn't stop me. She just said, be careful, Michael. Sometimes the dead should stay dead. Maybe, I said, heading toward the barn to pack. But not when they were buried alive. I left before sunrise. Grace stood on the porch, arms folded against the cold, her hair lifting in the wind. She didn't ask me to stay, and I didn't ask her to wait. Some things don't need words. The bus ride north took 6 hours. The further I went, the sharper the world felt, familiar roads, familiar skylines, all hauntingly close yet hollow. When we passed a sign for Lakeport, my pulse stuttered. That was where Maria and I had built our first house. I got off near downtown. Everything smelled like rain and exhaust. The world had kept spinning without me. At a coffee shop, I borrowed a newspaper from the counter, local section. Front page, Reeves and Saunders Group expands operations. A photo of Nick shaking hands with a city official. Maria stood beside him, smiling the same practiced smile I used to know. I stared at it until the letters blurred. Then I went to work. The plan had to be clean. No rage, no noise, just proof. First, I visited the county clerk's office. It wasn't hard to find public records on the cabin explosion. The report listed the investigator's name, a private contractor hired by the insurance company. I tracked him down, an older man named Harlan who smelled of tobacco and distrust. When I told him my name, he almost dropped his coffee. You're supposed to be dead. Yeah, I said. So I heard. He leaned forward, voice low. I always thought that case stank. They said the fire started from a faulty generator, but there was residue from an accelerant, someone poured fuel near the door. And your partner, Nick Saunders, rushed the insurance claim. Big payout, no autopsy. That was the confirmation I needed. Can you testify to that? I asked. He gave me a thin smile. For the right reason. That reason, I said, is justice. He nodded. Then yeah. I left him my number and stepped back into the rain. For the first time since waking in that field, I felt the ground solid under me. Back at the motel, I opened my laptop, the one Grace insisted I take. Using the bent key, I opened a small locker I'd found on the cabin's old property the next morning, just as my instincts had whispered. Inside were files, tax papers, old emails printed out, and a hard drive wrapped in tape. The drive contained backups from my company. In the folders, I found the missing pieces, insurance documents Nick had forged, signatures copied from my digital ID, Maria's approval as beneficiary. They hadn't just left me. They'd built their future out of my ashes. I called Sheriff Blakely first. "Remember that case, Michael Reeves?" He hesitated. "You mean, you? I've got proof of fraud and attempted murder. Meet me tomorrow." When I hung up, I looked at my reflection in the dark laptop screen. For the first time, I didn't look lost. The next morning, I walked into Nick's office. He didn't recognize me at first. 2 years, a few scars, a man presumed dead. But when I said his name, the blood drained from his face. "Hello, Nick." He stood slowly, voice shaking. "Jesus Christ. Michael." "Close," I said. "The man you tried to kill." His mouth opened, but no sound came. Maria came out from the conference room, heels clicking, phone in hand. She froze mid-step, the color leaving her face. "Michael," she whispered. I looked at her, really looked. For 2 years I'd imagined this moment, 1,000 versions of it. In most, I yelled. In some, I broke. But now, there was only silence. "You filed the claim," I said quietly. "You buried me with a ring I wasn't wearing. And you married the man who made sure I didn't walk out of that fire." Maria trembled. "Nick told me you were gone before the explosion. He said there was nothing left. And you believed him." Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't know, Michael. I swear, I didn't." Nick cut her off. "Don't talk to him. He's lying. He's—" I slid the folder across the desk. Inside, copies of forged insurance forms, the investigator's testimony, and the photo of them at the gala dated less than 6 months after my funeral. "You should call your lawyer," I said. I turned to leave. Behind me, I heard Nick's voice crack, a mix of rage and fear. "You'll regret this," he spat. "I already have," I said. "Every day you stole from me." When I walked outside, the air felt cleaner. 3 weeks later, the charges were filed: insurance fraud, conspiracy, and attempted murder. Maria confessed first. Nick didn't. He tried to blame her for everything, but the records and bank transfers told a different story. They'd both known. They'd both signed. The story hit local news. "Dead man returns to expose fraud scheme." I avoided cameras. I wasn't looking for fame, just a name. My name. When the case closed, Blakely offered to help restore my identity. I told him maybe I didn't need the old one anymore. "Then what'll you go by?" he asked. "Just Michael," I said. "That's enough." I went back to the farm in late autumn. Grace was in the orchard, sleeves rolled up, hair loose, gathering apples into a basket. When she saw me, she didn't run, didn't ask what happened. She just smiled, a real one, quiet and steady. "You came back," she said. "I told you I would. Did you get what you wanted?" I looked toward the hills. The sky was gold, the same shade as the field where I'd first opened my eyes. "Not what I wanted," I said. "What I needed." We walked back to the porch together. The world smelled of wood smoke and wet leaves. She handed me an apple. It was crisp, sharp, alive. "Planning to stay this time?" she asked. "I think so." That night, sitting beside the barn fire, I took the bent key from my pocket and tossed it into the flames. Sparks rose, disappeared into the dark. Grace leaned against me, her head on my shoulder. For a while, neither of us spoke. Finally, I said, "Funny thing about memories. You think they make you who you are. But maybe it's what you do after you remember that matters." She smiled faintly. "So who are you now?" I looked at the fields, the same ones that had once been nothing but emptiness, and felt the quiet settle inside me. "Someone alive," I said. "For real this time. 2 years ago, I was declared dead. Now, I bury the ghosts myself." And as dawn broke over the fields, I realized the strangest truth of all: sometimes, to find your way home, you have to lose everything, even your own name.